Okay, all right. So I have given the dog a treat, which I can hear him, but I don't know if you guys can. And I'm going to try to talk about texture. Let's see, told you guys that I wanted to do 2" by 2" squares. So let me see if I can pull that off. I've got it marked. And here. Okay. So anyway, I've got one going here. All right. Now I also have my blending stub, and we're doing texture. And I know that you guys have to be. I think a lot of folks were saying they were having some trouble figuring it out, and so I figured I'd do it. All right. So here's what I'm going to do. This is the whole sheet, and we're going to start with hair. A hair of an animal. So we'll start with just putting those marks, and the mark itself is it's down heavy, and then you're lifting up and pulling up when you do it. So you're just kind of flicking your hand, and it's thinner at the end, and it's always going to get darker at the base. And so what I'm thinking right now is, what if you're trying to do, I have a black lab who's wandering around because he thinks he needs more treats. Maybe he'll settle down, we'll see. But I'm basically throwing, and for me it's easier to go with this diagonal. And so what works for me, I do. So I'm not asking you guys to do anything that I wouldn't try to do myself. So I'm making this little flicking mark. And this is actually supposed to be my white hair. And what it comes down to is when you're looking at white hair, you're going to have, well, of course, areas of light. And if you're looking at some dark hair, you're going to have these black areas with also some white, so like highlight. I'm not sure if I have my other animal. There, here he is. So you've got the white hair, and the areas of white are basically absence of any kind of mark. Or you can put, what I like to do is actually use eraser to create those marks. So I like to use my eraser as a marking tool. I also have a blending stub here. Not a very good one. Couldn't find my nice one. I think you guys have better ones than I do. And I'm going to throw some, I'm going to extend that original mark that I made with the blending stub, which is basically going, and I want to keep that kind of motion of the lines in there, because I want to see those lines. And then I'm just going to throw maybe some eraser marks in it, and erase again to create more white through the area of dark. Or let's see if I can get it up here. We all can kind of see. So it's just basically, I'm looking for light to dark. I'm going to move along. So to make that a little darker, so here's one that I was working on earlier, and I gave it a little texture at a diagonal and a little bit of a curve in it. And what we're going to try to do is, now I'm going to think about it being black, and so what I'll do is I'll just take it just a little darker. And so again, when you're working with these, I'm hoping that you will do at least 3 to 4 values. Most of your textures will need at least 3, minimum 3, if you actually want it to be effective. And so what I'm doing now is I'm going to go darker, and so I'll probably take that all the way across. This mark that I'm making is the same that I would make if I was dealing with a human hair. I would be doing the same thing. I'm just pulling it across, I'm pulling it across, and I'm making those marks. Now I'm going from another direction, since I'm thinking about dark hair. So I'm creating a darker value. And again, I can get in here with my blending stub and darken everything. Blend it in, darken it. Alright, Now, when it comes to the sheep hair one, that one was more like you're looking at like curly lines, but you don't want them to be this. That doesn't work. So what we're looking for is more kind of squiggly. So I'm going to squiggle back and forth and go around and around and around. And when I'm making this mark, I'm going to think about like fuzzy curly hair. I'm going in many directions. And I'm putting a value down. And what I'm going to do is then pick up my blending stub and I'm going to do it again. So I'm going to add some more of that same squiggly, extending that into where I want it to be lightest area of the wiggly marks here. Let's see. And then what I would do is keep going and making it darker. I would just deepen my color. So I just keep going until I'm happy, until I've got my shadow. And I'll just keep going and going. And then I can always go in here and add more blending. So that's basically what I'm doing. And if you take it far enough, you can actually get some really nice deep value. I'm trying to bring it up. So here, here, here. Okay, then we're going to play with the lizard, or in this case, the gator. And one of the things that you realize with the gator is, you know, it's basically got an armor. So the armor it's like these little squares, and down the middle of the back of the gator, they're a little tighter. I guess I'm thinking it's, you know, keeping the gator safer because that's where it comes out of the water. And so they really should be in a row, so it's not like brick. You saw me do that. So you want to keep them kind of in a row. So I'm going to go and I'm just going to get a little bigger. And they're kind of rectangular, but also like a soft rectangle. And then on this side, I'm just going to go a little bigger. And it's like this is the middle of the back, and then over here, it's getting wider. Okay. And then what you do is you go in there, and I'm going to grab some graphite from this area here. And I'm going to go around these, darkening behind the actual steal some more over here, going around the shapes, the rectangles. Okay, then what you do is you take and right in the middle, you're going to add some dark back in. So it's kind of leaving a little bit of a light area around. It's really not that hard to do. And if you want to, you can add more texture, you can deepen the colors. You know, I just played with it. Here's the one that's finished. Okay, and then when it came to the fish, so the fish, you gotta think about scales. So, you know, I'm just gonna do some simple scales. So it's just like this, and then you're always going to the center, out, the center, and then to this one goes to that center, and it just keeps going. And so I'm just going to fill up an area of scale. Whoops. Whoa. There, that's okie dokie. Okay, when you have that, this one's actually fairly easy. This, you know, you might even take it and go pretty dark with your lines if you want, because if you can really intensify that line so that it'll show up when you do your smudge across it. Because what we're doing is, with the fish, this is the underlying actual texture of its scales, but there is a pattern often on top of the fish. And so that's kind of, and this is just a simple example, just showing color, but it also shows, here's the scale, but then there's color over that scale. So you can imagine how nice it would be if we were actually playing with color as well. Alright, so now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to, sometimes I'll just use my finger and I'll just smudge across it with my finger. So I'm just smudging across it like that, and then smudging again. And then maybe I could go in here and add some extra design. You know, maybe over here I do some design. I don't know. Just kind of playing with it, thinking about what would a fish look like. And it would be helpful if I actually used some reference, which you could, which would be a good idea. I'm open-minded. Again, I'm just trying to show you some ways of doing it. Again, we're pattern over pattern. Pattern of the actual scales, and then pattern over that. And I'm totally doing it in pencil, but I want you to think about what it would be like if you were playing with it in color. So here it is with it like done a little more carefully and slower. Over here I've got the human hair, so again I've deepened, and you can see those I've created these little like lozenges, or be an OG shape, and those are helpful to kind of see those like curves in some hair. Okay, so then we have the snake, which was kind of cool. One of the things that we learned with the snake, actually, I thought I had my tracing paper right here. I like to use tracing paper. It's in a box over there, I think. But I'm gonna jump over here to tiger until I get around to figuring out where my tracing paper is. But let's do the tiger then. So the tiger is a lot like a zebra. They're very similar. So here's the zebra. It's just black and white. Thank you. And here's the tiger. So again, you've got brown, black, and white with the tiger, and with the zebra, it's just black and white. So the pattern is fairly close. And so here's the final. So here's what we did with the final. So here's your zebra, and here's the tiger, and the only difference is with the tiger there's more value in there. So this medium value here is actually considered orange. Alright, so what we do is we draw out our basic shape that we feel would work for the pattern itself, and I'm just going to throw in some shapes. And this is the same thing we do for the zebra. I'm going to go ahead and just color in, and so I personally like to do this diagonal. So I'm going to just throw the diagonal in there. I'm just going to get some value in there so we can speed this up. And I'm going to use my blending stub. And now I'm going to start to kind of play with the idea of this is hair. So I'm actually now pulling it this other way here. I think I like it better. So I'm going across where I just drew it, and I'm pulling it out into the white area. So if this is a zebra, we're not going to do too much to the white area. Okay, so I'm kind of thinking about it looking like that the hair is kind of softening. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back in here, and I'm going to deepen my black by going back over those lines. Whoops, I'm really hard on my pencils. And pressing really hard down in here. And then as it comes off of that shape, I'm going to go ahead and kind of give it the hair texture. And that's all I was doing. Now, if I'm thinking that I want that hair to look a little more interesting, I can pull I can do it again. I can pull some more off. With the blending stub. And then I can always go back in here with my eraser and create marks with the eraser and go back into that black with some white marks. And so what you end up with is that. That's what I was doing here. Same thing. And all I want to do on this one with the tiger is to go ahead and deepen my shadows. And you can see I did use some eraser in there a little bit, and just stretched out those black lines so that you actually see the hair, the look of the hair. All right, so that's the same thing I did, same technique with the leopard. So this time I just did the black marks. I smudged in where my lighter interior of a leopard is, and that example for color is this one. And so you have the light brown in the center, black around it, and then the sometimes with the leopard it's actually pretty dark brown in here, and with a not jaguar, it's a cheetah, it's actually lighter in there. So you can actually use that pattern for both. And then the giraffe is the same thing. The big deal is figuring out what the pattern looks like. By the way, there's multiple patterns for giraffes. I did not know this until I started playing with it, and I was like, oh my goodness, there's a lot of pattern. And then we have the feather. Now, it took me a while to figure out the feather. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to take the feather, and what I want you to do is see, like I start with, I'm just going to do the ridge. So I'm drawing the ridge, and notice I'm actually, what is that called? That's the interior of the feather. It's a ridge. It is a ridge, but it's got a name. I can't remember the name. Darn it. Okay, so I'm going to put a shadow. That right there is the cast shadow from that standing up. Okay, so there's light hitting this, and then there's a cast shadow, and that's kind of important to throw in. And then what I like to do is I like to pull it towards that spot. So I'm going to start at the top, and I'm just going to pull towards. So I'm pulling it towards the feather. I'm giving it a slight curve while I do that. I'm also turning my pencil a little bit to get my sharper lines, because this is a mechanical pencil, and I can flip the pencil and get it sharper. Also, if I don't feel comfortable doing it this way, I can always turn my paper until I feel more comfortable, and then working my way around. And I can loosen it up a little bit. And you can also add those extra little soft fuzzy things down here at the bottom. And then when I've done that, then I go back and I go from this ridge and I go back in and I go from the ridge in to the other area. And that's basically all of the textures that I've asked you to do so far. I guess the only thing I haven't done is wood grain. And so wood grain is basically like this. You've got a knot, another knot, a knot, another knot, and a knot, just for the fun of it. And then what you're going to do is you're going to go towards that knot and then go around. And when you get to another knot, you go around. And you come back and then you go along and you go around the knot and come back and around and around, and you keep going. And then just keep doing these lines, and they can get thinner and thicker. And I'm just going to keep going. You can actually kind of make them jagged, so you can kind of create a texture like that with the wood grain. Tighten it up right there. They're not crossing though. See, it's growing, so it's not going to cross. And then I can add all kinds, like oak will have like extra lines in here. Maybe the knot is darker. Add extra lines. Then go in here with your blending stub. You can darken and stretch out those marks. You can get it really looking good. Blend it out big time, and then go in there if you really want to play. I love it when I pick up my eraser and use my eraser as a marking tool and go back in and create marks with the eraser. Okay, so that's basically the textures I've asked you to do. Do the best you can, and don't, oh, the snake. One more. I forgot about the snake. Okay, so the snake is a hexagon. So like you started with a hexagon. So it's kind of a skinny, tall hexagon. So here's a hexagon, okay? And what I like to do is I'll use the tracing paper because I just want to get done. So you notice I traced it on this side with the tracing paper, and then I flip it, and then I just trace again. Digging through now. And I move it over, and I trace again. Move it over. And so what I'm doing is I'm creating the pattern that would be the snake's pattern. It is a basic hexagon. And I'm using the tracing paper to make my shapes fit and go quicker because I like to be efficient with my time. And that's how I use the tracing paper. It works for me. And then to finish out the snake, what you're going to do is you're actually going to take this bottom area and you're going to round that off. When you're done, you can round it off like this. And then you go in there and you start playing with your colors because it's a pattern on top of a pattern. The texture itself is the and you can see where I rounded those hexagons. And the pattern that I did here was actually a diamondback rattle. So we have the rattlesnake. So it's got like the light colored, then real light, and then it has the dark pattern that would be normally would be dark here like this, and there's your diamond. So that's it. Have fun.